Focused interview with parents.
I have a fourth grader and a first grader, and they attend a local school here in Fort Myers, and they are doing well.
So I'm a parent of two girls at an elementary school in the town. One is in kindergarten and one is in third grade.
How does your child's school communicate with you about grades?
I feel like they do a pretty nice job with communication. Before COVID hit, it was a little easier. I was able to go into the schools a lot easier, where now they're not allowing anybody in the schools. So I wouldn't say that's on the school, that's just mainly on the new COVID procedures. But I'm still satisfied with how the school's been handling communications about my child's grades. They use online programs to show both of my child's grades and what they're doing as far as their quizzes and tests and things like that.
So I get my children's grades through what's called a focus portal. It's a portal that the school district provides through the county, and I'm able to log on my phone or on any computer, and I get real-time view as long as the teachers are inputting the grades, and I can look at that as often as I want, and that way I can question it. It also gives me other information, like if they're absent or if they're tardy or any of those other information. It also shows me what assignments are going to be due. However, also because I have a kindergarten age child, I get grades sent home through a grade book for them, and my third grader brings her assignments home in a weekly folder. So I get to see if she takes a test, I get those grades, and so I can see where she's at, what she did wrong, what she struggled with.
Would you say that you're lenient with their grades or more assertive as far as...
I'm extremely strict with their grades. We have a policy in the house that anything below an A we have to talk about, and that way I can understand if the grade is a lower than good grade because they're not understanding the material and they try their best, or are they not trying. So as long as there's A's, we don't have those conversations, but anything lower than A, we always have a conversation about it. So I would say I am more of a strict parent about grades.
I'm going to give you some examples of types of assessments. If you believe your child would enjoy and do really well on it, give a thumbs up. If you don't believe your child would enjoy or do well on it, give a thumbs down. If you're unsure, give a sideways thumb.
2 thumbs up.
Okay. So I would say for my kindergartner, for my third grader, depends on what the poster's about.
Probably more of a thumbs down for both.
For my third grader, for my kindergartner, I would say thumbs up.
Probably a thumbs in the middle for my fourth grader and a thumbs up for my first grader.
Both kids, thumbs up.
Thumbs up for both.
I would say both thumbs up for my kids.
Say this for both.
I would say with my kindergartner, it would depend. And I would say with my third grader, thumbs down.
Ooh, probably a thumbs down for my fourth grader and a thumbs up for my first grader.
Both kids, thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Both kids, thumbs up.
I like that one. I'd say hopefully a thumbs up for both.
I would say with my kindergartner, maybe. I would say with my third grader, it would depend on the task.
What do you kind of mean by it would depend on some of these?
So I would say my third grader is very particular about things that she likes and likes not to do, and if it's something that interests her, I think that she would be on board to almost facilitate in any of these mediums, but if it's something that she's not interested in, she would be more, I would say, pushed back. Whereas my kindergartner is very competitive, so she kind of likes to just do what everybody else is doing, so she gets pretty enthusiastic about much of everything.
They probably would say no. Is this what I think they would want, or what I would if I let them?
What you think that they would do good at or enjoy.
Oh, okay. So yes, I would say they would not really enjoy the writing book.
I would say this for both.
Yes, they would like that word.
I would say thumbs up for both of them.
Oh, they would not like that.
I would say with my kindergartner, I would say with my third grader.
Yes.
Both kids thumbs up.
I think my fourth grader, yes. First grader, not so much.
I would say both kids thumbs down.
I think I'd say maybe unsure.
I would say with my third grader that she would enjoy doing the task, but she would be very apprehensive because she has a little bit of social anxiety, so that would be a maybe. I feel like my kindergartner would absolutely love to be the center of class, so I would say thumbs up.
Probably thumbs down.
Thumbs up for both of them.
Thumbs down.
I would say thumbs down for both of them for different reasons. I think that my third grader doesn't like to be told things, so she gets very obstinate about it. Like she pushes back a lot when she's being told to do something or being pressured. Whereas I think my kindergartner would feel very pressured because she always feels like she needs to do the best and she needs to be the quickest. So that would, I feel like, give her anxiety for those reasons.
Does your child experience anxiety regarding their grades or big tests? If yes, what does your child's school or teacher do to help with this? What helps reduce this anxiety in your child?
No, for my first grader. I have not seen any anxiety in her, for her when it involves school. My fourth grader has improved immensely, but I still see a little bit of anxiety pop up, but not so much. The school has done a really nice job with making sure my son in fourth grade gets any emotional support or physical support with more time on tests. Also with sending him to a guidance counselor. They've been really good with that and helping him reduce his anxiety. I actually think it's been helping a lot.
Yes. In fact, my third grader this year had to be introduced to FSA this year. And she came home crying saying that she doesn't think she's going to go to fourth grade. And this is a child who has never received a B in the 4 years that she has been at her school. And I think that my way of dealing with it was, I was like, no big deal. It's just one test out of many. Don't worry about it. Trying to ease that tension. So I think that, I don't know if that's a me-created problem or a school-created problem or just the test-created problem, but yes, I did experience that this year with that FSA. I've never really had any other experience with any of my kids expressing anxiety over tests before, but the FSA really did create that kind of situation in my household. I'm not quite sure about what the school has done, but I do know that my third grade's teacher this year I thought was a pretty good job of making sure that the parents were sending notes to school with my third grader for all of the testing, giving encouraging, and she even went back to previous teachers and had them write notes to the kids so they could read them before the day of the test to tell them like how well they got it, what a good job, you know, they're doing so far and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's all of the teachers at the school, but at least my particular experience with the teacher is I know they're dealt with the situation at hand, so I don't blame them. So I think they did a good job of at least trying to mitigate that.
Oh, that was kind. What helps reduce this anxiety in your child?
I think that specifically with my third grader, I think that just continuing to have that conversation about it and explaining what it really means and what this test is really for, and her understanding like the logic behind why they take this test, what they're using the results for, and instead of it being like this mystery test of like, is this my gate key to the next grade, and that's all that's discussed about it. You got to understand like, okay, the government uses this for funds for the school, and like being extremely honest with her, I think helped with that anxiety.
How effective do you believe the use of standardized testing, such as the FSA, is in communicating to your child's academic ability? Why?
I don't believe it's too effective in communicating academic ability because I believe some children are just not as comfortable taking tests.
I feel like it's a small piece of the pie, and I don't completely disagree with testing our children to see, kind of get a baseline of where they're at. But the amount of pressure that they put on these children and the amount of pressure that they put on the teachers creates a major issue, especially with the academic year, because the teachers are teaching for the FSA, and once the FSA is done, their curriculum kind of ends for the year. So particularly with a year like this year where we have a elongated school year, they're teaching to the FSA. The FSA was still taking it at the normal time, and now they have a month of no real curriculum to give these kids. So I think that it's a extremely poor move on behalf of the state to put this much pressure on the teachers, which is then overflowing to the children.
Do you believe the use of standardized testing should influence whether or not your child has to retake the class or grade? Why?
I do not believe that the use of the test should influence whether or not there has to be a redo of a grade or a class, because I do feel like there's so many other factors that play into the child and whether or not they should be able to progress, other than how well they can take a test. An example would be my fourth grader now, last year in third grade, did really well in his class and with his class work, but the test did not do as well, and it did not hold him back for a grade because they went off of what they call a portfolio, and his portfolio grades were acceptable.
No, and I think that children have bad days, and I think we as adults have bad days, and so I don't think one test should determine. I think it should be a comprehensive view of how the kid has done throughout the year, and I think that should be a very private conversation between the parent, the teacher, and the child to determine where the child should go next, because that's where who's going to know what the student is capable of, is that triangle of communication.
What are some skills or traits that cannot be measured by a standardized test that you feel are an important part of a student's academic achievement? Do you think these are more important, less important, or equally as important compared to content areas like reading, math, science, or history?
I feel like certain life skills and common sense are areas that you can't really measure by a test.
So I feel like there is a lot of retention and perception in the questions. So if a child has test anxiety, if they're able to verbalize to you their understanding, then you can't see that in a test. Everybody learns and reacts differently. So if a child is able to retain the information and verbalize that to the teacher with their understanding, and then they don't exhibit that in the test, that doesn't mean that they don't understand the material. And I think that especially at a young age, when you get into the higher level of grades, I think that, you know, it's easier for kids to basically take the information they learned and gear that more towards a test. But when kids are young, they still exhibit the things that they learned in different ways. So when you're doing that in an elementary age situation and putting a lot of pressure on them, plus if the test maybe wasn't so pressurized, maybe the kids would also do better, because if it was no big deal and there wasn't that feeling of dread or whatever, and they were just taking another test and it was just an assessment to see where they were, I honestly think that you would have greater outcomes.
If you could come up with an alternative to standardized testing to measure learning and achievement, what would it look like?
I think that would be something I'd have to think more on. It's really, I've thought about it, but I really haven't come up with an alternative or a better. I've heard things that the testing is purely based on funding to the schools. In which case, if that's what a tool that they're using to, you know, on how they're going to fund schools, that's fine. I feel like as long as it does not impact the children and whether or not they get to pass a grade. And I feel like I would be okay with that, and as long as that's communicated with the children to just do the best that they can, then I'm okay if that's the best way that they've come up with to measure academic ability across a very broad spectrum.
Like I said, I have no problem with having a standardized test, but just take the pressure off it and make it like a no big deal test, and that way we can see where our kids are. And then have the teachers do the achievement assessment at the end of the test. So you have a piece of paper with a question, you have their scores, and then you can add and supplement that with, okay, I think this child, you know, has test anxiety. However, they have shown throughout the year this, and you know, put it into the teacher's hands, since they're the ones that know your child and what they're capable of. So if you could just have a teacher fill out a self-assessment. The problem with that is then who's assessing the teacher? But I think that you'll find that even in that realm, if the teacher's doing a good job, you're going to see that within their assessments, and you're going to see as a whole, if they're not a good teacher, then you'll see that in those assessments as well, and it'll just carry over more naturally.
Thank you for taking the time to sit down during this interview with me.
You're welcome.
That's it. Thank you.
All right.
You did a great job.